Hello, welcome back, everybody. We have a special guest this week that I am so excited to introduce you to. Her name is Crystal McIntyre, and she
Mm.
specializes in something called human design. Now, if you've been listening to my podcast for a while, you guys have probably heard me reference human design about a dozen times. And every time I do, I say, eventually I'll do a podcast on this. At some point, I'm going to explain to you guys what this is. And I love it. I reference it sometimes, but to do a deep dive, I just couldn't quite figure out where to start or what to say. And then thanks to my coach Amani, I was introduced to Crystal and her work. And I was like, oh, well, there's the answer. Let's just bring somebody on to introduce you guys who this is their thing. And so, Crystal, tell us a little bit about you and how you got into this human design work.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Um, so I'm a 1-3 emotional manifesting generator, which might mean something or might mean nothing. And I got into human design. I was introduced in 2017, and I really resonated with it, but I didn't understand what to do with the information. And then when it came back into my world at the end of 2019, I just became obsessed with it. I took a year-long training, and now it's the primary tool that I use in my business because understanding your human design is like understanding the manual of who you came here to be. And so in my current business, I use human design. I'm also an illustrator and author of picture books. And I'm in the process of fusing the two together to kind of bring human design to life in a fun and creative way.
Oh, yay. That's so fun. I've enjoyed following you on Instagram. I saw you've been getting into improv and doing other fun
Yeah.
things as well.
Yes.
Okay, so for the people listening who have absolutely no idea what we're talking about, what is human design?
Mm. Human design is really this beautiful merger of science and spirituality. And so on the spiritual side, it pulls from astrology, the chakra system, the tree of life. And then the main component is based off the I Ching. So the I Ching has been around for over 3,000 years, used as a tool for divination in the East, and it has these 64 hexagrams. And so in human design, we have the 64 gates of human design. Now, in the 70s, science discovered a correlation between the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching and the 64 codons of our DNA. And so it really is this quantum energetic blueprint manual of who you came here to be.
Yeah. So I want to go ahead and just give voice to the skeptics because I just want you guys to know I was one of you. Okay. So, skeptics, I'm going to hold space for you. If there's a part of you feeling some discomfort, we're going to talk through it for a second. Okay. So, my first introduction to human design was either 20, probably 2021. I spent like a whole year hearing people talk about it. I was in different coaching groups and there's all these coaches coming in. They'd be like, but do you know your human design? And then they'd ask the host, but like, what's your human design? And I was like, what's your human design? And listen, I freaking love typing systems. I can tell you all about the Enneagram. I love the strength finders. Mental health diagnoses, disc profiles. I freaking love all of the things because I want to know myself more. And I feel like the more I can know myself, the more I can take care of myself and move through the world well. So I freaking love all of them. But I had a lot of resistance to human design. One, I felt like, don't we have enough things already? Do we need another way to name things? Come on now. So there was just like, I don't want to learn another new thing first. Then um I learned that it had something to do with astrology and like when and where you were born. And so I was like, this cannot have any truth to it. Like, this is a joke. And so I ignored it and I ignored it. And I just like rolled my eyes when another person would come on wanting to talk about human design in some sort of place online or in a group setting. And then finally, it was actually Amani who started talking about it more. And I was like, crap, now she's into this thing. Now she's advocating for this thing. I was like, so I remember messaging her probably in 2021 and saying, all right, I have been hearing about this human design thing for like a year in all these different places. how do I like find out my type? What is
Mm.
this? And so she told me about an app. I plugged myself into the app and I felt more seen and known. Like I felt seen with the Enneagram. Okay.
Mm.
And then I got into human design and it was like, this is spooky. And so
Mm.
I kind of like looked at it and had to set it down because it was like, this is a lot. Okay. Okay. So just gonna like leave that here. Um, and then because I'm such a curious person, then I just had to like keep diving in. And then, of
Mhm.
course, I ran my husband's and ran my kids. And then I'm like talking to my husband about it and then started listening to a podcast on it to understand what all this stuff meant. But I was like 50% in and like 50% still skeptic because there was this part of me that didn't want to believe it was all true because if it meant it was true, then I had to unpack a bunch of other stuff because I'd always ignored astrology. And so I was like, I was raised with a lot of fear around astrology. And
Mm.
a lot of people are taught, I grew up evangelical and there's a lot of people in the church who told me stay away from this. It's bad. It's scary. I don't know. It's like woo woo. There's a lot of things that kind of evil about it. Um, and so all of that was inside of me. And astrology, I never connected with me. I was a Scorpio, like 50% chance I was going to resonate with it, flip a coin. I was like, that's a chance of flipping a coin. This is just like
Mhm.
whatever. And so I had not given it anything. And then human design was making me really uncomfortable because I was having to go, what? And so then I dove into a little bit more of astrology and learned about your rising sign versus just your sun sign. And then the more I dove into that, the more I was like, crap, I feel really seen over
Mm.
there. And so, anyways, I worked through for about 6 months. I very privately was on a human design journey. I wasn't talking about it other than my husband who hears all my external processing. But outside of him, I was like, this stuff's kind of weird. I'm not going to tell anybody I'm doing it. And then I had a client get really stuck. Like she was just really, really stuck and it wasn't really clear the best way to her to move through something. And I knew she was a really open-minded person. And I said, listen, for like 6 months, I've been secretly and quietly studying this thing called human design. And it's kind of woo-woo and I'm not really sure about it, but can we just plug you in and see what it says? Because I think there's a chance it could help. And we read it together with this like open-mindedness on this call together. And it was so creepily accurate and it gave her the clarity that she needed because it addresses things. And
Mm.
we're going to get into this energy and decision making and all this stuff. And after I saw how helpful it was with my clients, I started using it with more and more and more clients who were open to it.
Mm.
And I've only had one client so far be like, no, that makes me really uncomfortable. And I'm like, okay, then we don't go there. We don't use it. But everybody else I've used it with, it is heavily increasing their results. It is making their
Mm.
lives easier and better and aligned. And so that's what brings us to today. That's why I was like, okay, there's something here we need to learn. And I need to stop hiding it from the listeners of my podcast because I've introduced it to clients, but I haven't talked about it publicly yet. So
Mm.
what is happening? Why is this thing that's kind of feels, is this woo woo? Why are we, some people scared of it? Can you talk about like some of the skepticism that is probably rising up for people?
Yeah. I think when we compare it to things like the Enneagram or even like Myers-Briggs, what we're looking at there is we're allowing the logical mind to decide, right? We're reading questions and we're like, oh, this is who I see myself to be. Human design takes away the logical mind. And that's why it's so confronting because the mind is like, this doesn't make sense. Like, how can they know this about me? It's based just on my birth time and my birthplace. And it's because all around us, there are these tiny, tiny particles in like a square inch of space. There's like a trillion of these tiny particles. And science didn't have a name for them until sometime in the 2000s. And they're called neutrinos. And this is cells or particles that carry information. And so this information is actually imprinted into us when we are born. And so it's what we are gifted with. It's the challenges we're here to face. And so when we look at our human design, we start seeing the things about ourselves that we've either been making wrong because we were told that that's not how it can be, or the things that we know to be true about ourselves that we haven't fully been able to name or access or Um, yeah, I think that that kind of ties into like feeling some way like they're wrong. We sense some, we put shame around them in some way. And where human design is a very logical system, so the mind can wrap itself around understanding it. But at the end of the day, it's something you have to embody and start experimenting with if you want to see any results. Because you can know all of the information, but if you're not actually applying it, then nothing's going to change.
Yeah, I've heard it regularly referred to as the human design experiment.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's considered a 7-year deconditioning experiment because, as we know, every cell that can regenerate in our bodies takes 7 years for like the longest one. So it's considered a 7-year deconditioning experiment because we store so much in our cellular memory. And so it takes time. And so the first step is awareness of, oh, look at me, I'm doing this thing again. And then we start bringing the time of awareness and the time of action together slowly until in the moment we're like, oh, I'm not going to make that mistake again. Or, oh, I was in this place before and I did it different. What if I do it this way now?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So before one more thing I just want to share with some people who may be skeptic before we dive into more of the nitty-gritty fun details. Um, one of the things that I think caused my initial resistance is my Christian upbringing and the being afraid of anything that's different. Um, and what really helped me to like merge these things together was, what it reminded me of? The resistance to it and the freaking out about it. It reminds me of how when scientists started discovering germs, which are invisible, people freaked out. People were literally
Mm,
murdered and killed for believing in germs because like what you believe in this invisible stuff that's floating around and making people sick, like it was like witchcraft, and
mm,
but science had found this, and it took a while for people to accept it. And I started thinking to myself, okay, what if there actually is something to
mm,
this, to the fact that the way that the planets move is pulling the energy and shifting, and we know that everything's made of energy, like science has very clearly proven that one already, right? So everything is made of energy anyways. The moon is 70%. We're made of water. We know the moon affects the water, so maybe it is possible the moon's affecting our bodies. But what about all the other things? Like, could it be possible that all these things are affecting us? And for me, I just started thinking about it from my like in, in my spiritual way of just, it's kind of like studying for me. It's like studying anatomy and being able to like we always knew that you eat food and then it comes out the other end of your body, right?
mhm,
But eventually we started understanding why and how. And I
mhm,
think for me, watching what's happening in human design and watching how minds are realizing this and studying this, to me, it feels like an awakening of like a new discovery
mm,
that ironically is also not new
mhm,
because before the modern era, like believing that the stars and the planets were affecting us was just common knowledge and belief systems. And then just in the last few hundred years, we've come away from that. So it's like a returning. I don't know. So there's something about it for me
mm,
that's like a returning to the ancient, and I mean, even the wise men in the Bible story used the
mm.
stars to know a lot about Jesus's birth, right? And so you're just like, okay, this has always kind of been here, but for some reason we've gotten away from it. And so it's like a returning, but then also like a new discovery. That's kind of how I see it. Would you say that that's off base?
No, I think that that's very true. I think for me, it's a way to experiment with the information. And I think that's what's beautiful. Instead of just allowing the mind to be like, this is what I know to be true about myself, we're actually allowing ourselves space to like try something out and see what happens. But I
Mhm,
do feel like it is a coming back to, and I think that's what's happening a lot. There's a lot of coming back to the land, coming back to community. I think we're in
mhm,
a big reclamation of
mhm,
the
mhm,
past
mhm,
in a new way.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, I would agree with that. Okay. So now, if you're listening, just put your skepticism to the side. Okay. And, but I know many of you are open. That's what I found with my clients is sometimes there's like a little bit of resistance, but a lot of them are like, no, I'm open to new things. Show me, tell me what's going on. I want to see, let's just look, let's just dive in. So I have found that actually most people are like super curious and like, I want to see mine. What's my profile? Right. So I've actually
Mhm.
found there's probably only about 25% of people I've seen have resistance,
Mm.
or I'm just attracting very open-minded people either way.
Mhm.
But, let's go ahead and dive in. So
Yeah.
you do what? You take your birth date and time and you do what? Where do you put it? I've used a couple of apps. I know there's websites. So if somebody wants to start looking at their profiles, what do they do?
Yeah. So I actually have it on my website. So you can Google, human design. I have it on my website where you not just get the information, but you get like a 20-page PDF that dives deep into it. So
Oh, that's
so
great.
you don't have to then Google separately all the things.
So we'll have that in the show notes. I'll make sure to put the link so that if while you guys are listening to this, unless you're driving, but if you're doing something at home and you're going to enjoy this episode more if you go ahead and pause, go to the show notes, look at your profile, and then keep listening because as we start talking about more terms,
Yeah.
you're going to really enjoy it more if you have your profile in front of you.
Yeah. Yeah. So you just need your birth date, which I think we all know, your birthplace, and your birth time. This is the one that most people don't seem to know. And so there are a couple ways around this. What you can do is enter in what you think to be true and then read through and just see like what resonates, what doesn't resonate. Um, I I have an app or like a program, a software that I pay for that will say like, okay, your birth information is highly accurate, or, oh, if you were born an hour later, things would change. And so that can be really helpful, especially when people know like, oh, I'm born between 4 and 6, like how much changes during that time. Sometimes it's not a lot, sometimes it's huge changes. Um, and so, yeah, getting as close to your birth time as possible is always helpful. Otherwise, we want to resort to any sort of like intuition that we sense about ourselves. Then you're going to enter in your information and you're going to get your design. So maybe I can pull up your design for the people watching.
Yeah. And so you guys, if you're listening to this on the podcast, you can also click a link over to the YouTube channel and look at a video of mine if you want to. Otherwise, we'll talk through this.
Yeah. So then we get what we're seeing here. So we have your energy type. So this is Sophia's information. So we have energy type generator. There are 4 energy types and 1 subtype because there's generators. And then there's what I am, which is a manifesting generator. And we're technically the same type, but with differences. And then there's projectors, manifestors, and reflectors. So that's the first thing to understand is your energy type. Each type has its own strategy. So generators and manifesting generators, our strategy is to respond. This is like the brakes or the gas. So our type is the aura, is our energy, is how our energy is felt by others. Our strategy is the brakes or the gas. It's why sometimes it feels like life is moving along, everything's going great, and sometimes it feels like the brakes are on and you can't figure out why. Then we have our authority. There are 7 authorities. Your authority is like your GPS. This is how you're being guided through life. Now, the thing to know about the authority, and this is where a lot of people can potentially get stuck because the mind is not designed to make decisions. The decision maker comes from in the body, from a sense, from something we can't logically understand really. And that's where we get this friction because the mind is in the back seat. It's not paying attention. And yet it's trying to tell you where to go. It only knows the past. And so the authority is the GPS. It would be like having someone in the back seat half asleep and your passenger with the GPS and the person in the back seat's trying to tell you where to go. And the passenger's like, no, but I have the GPS. Like, listen to me. And they're like, no, I know where we're going. And they don't even have a clue.
Mm-hmm.
And so the more that we can understand our authority and deepen the relationship with it, the easier it starts to be to make decisions that feel both scary and yet right.
Yeah. And so like for mine, it's solar plexus, right?
Mhm,
Which
mhm.
that's not the same as gut, right? That's it. Or is
So
that?
this is where, so the solar plexus is emotional. And this
Okay.
is an authority that's really slowing everything down, because if we make decisions inside of our emotions, we tend to make them, we can potentially make decisions that aren't aligned for us because they're coming from an emotional state.
Mhm.
Now, with generators and manifesting generators, we do have a gut sense because we have our sacral defined, which is the red square near the bottom. When this is defined, you're automatically a generator or a manifesting generator, and you have this yes, no instinctual, like
Mhm.
something to follow. So the emotional authority becomes an added layer of like, okay, this feels like a yes, but am I also just riding a high? Am I having the best day ever? And that's where we really want to understand the hopes and the dreams and the possibilities that the high brings in, and then the fears and the doubts and the confusion that the low brings in. And so we need to come back to a grounded place of like, does this still feel like a yes?
Mhm.
This might be a lot.
Yeah, for me, I'm like, it's so great because like I learned when I learned that I have an emotional authority. I
Mhm,
knew that because my husband and I we've been together for 18 years, and so many of our decisions have been completely illogical, but I will
mhm,
just say I just have a really strong feeling and I just could not back down from it. And I'm like, this just feels right. And all the
mm,
things, all the decisions that we made when we just trusted this feeling I was having have been the right things for us to do, even if they were completely illogical.
mhm,
And so we always knew that we make decisions based on how like Sophia's feeling. And you're if they're a really strong one, you're not talking me out of it. Like I might not be able
mhm,
to explain to you, it might not make sense logically, but I'm like, I have to do this or I have to go here.
mm,
Right. But then one of the things that was really powerful that I learned in human design about being an emotional authority was somebody said that emotional authorities, because and I'm sure you're gonna say this soon, that they teach you to start with your energy type, like master your how your type works in the world, and then your
mhm,
strategy and authority. Because there's if you're not looking at the screen, if you're looking at yours, there's like so much to learn. I mean, there's
mhm,
just so many layers to your design that it's a lot of information. But
mhm,
um I'd love for us to dive into each of the energy types. But regarding the
mhm,
emotional authority, somebody said to that you may be quick to be really excited and say yes.
mm,
So to never like to never agree to anything in the moment because you could be
mm,
influenced by other things, but to wait till you're grounded and you are neutral and you're in a calm place and a calm mood, and
mm,
then see how you feel, and those are the
mm,
feelings to trust and those are the feelings to make decisions from. And
mm.
I can see that. I can see many mistakes I made were when I made decisions in the moment versus pausing and waiting till I get to calm.
Mhm. Yeah. So the only thing I would say is, to me, your type, your strategy, and your authority need to kind of be understood together.
Mhm,
And so we want to understand, what does it mean to be a generator?
mhm,
And then how are you responding? And what are you feeling? And this is the thing about human design. It can seem very boxy, right? Like it's like, you're a generator with an emotional authority and you're a 5/1, so this is how you should be. But it's not meant to be a box. It's meant to be an experiment in liberated living. And so how you are as a generator and how your emotions impact you are going to be completely different than another 5/1 generator. And so for me, it's about understanding the relationship. And so right now you deeply trust your feelings. And the more that you understand your wave, the and that's where even saying like, yeah, you need 24 hours to make a decision. It's really about just slowing it down enough to
mhm,
understand, oh, I'm in an emotional state right now.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
And what do I need to give myself to kind of move that energy? When we're in heightened emotions, we don't want to move the energy. We like being up there, but making decisions on a high is not always to our benefit.
Mhm.
We sometimes overextend ourselves, we give away our energy.
Mhm.
And right now, one of my biggest things to remind people is like your energy is your most precious resource. So
Mhm.
who and what are you giving it away to? And
Mhm.
on the high, you might be giving away to everyone because you're just like, yeah, you get some and you get some and you get some. But is that true for you? And is that good for you?
Mhm. Mhm. What I love, I think this is why human design ties into my work so well, is that a key principle of what I teach is my definition of self-care is energy management.
Mhm,
And so that's why self-care looks completely different for every single person, because what restores your energy and depletes your energy is different based on who you are and how you move through the world and what are your joys and pleasures. And if people give you energy or exhaust you, like,
mhm,
and so all these things, I knew I didn't need human design to say it for me. I had already figured out, like, manage your energy. But
mhm,
then what has been so beautiful is, because human design is based in understanding how your energy uniquely works, I'm able to more carefully tailor it. And so, um,
mhm.
I I guess let's talk about the energy types, because I know I'm a generator. And so go ahead and describe what each of them are before I start going on some tangent about what happened when I learned I was a generator.
Yeah. So generators and manifesting generators make up about 70% of the population. Generators are about 37%, manifesting generators are about 33%. And we have this really big energy. We have this energy that is felt. And we are here. Okay, so this is where I like to be a little nuanced, because if you start exploring human design, you might read like generators and manifesting generators. We're here to work, we're here to bring things to life, we're the builders. And I get a lot of generators and manifesting generators that are like, like what? But we have been gifted with this sacral energy. And this sacral energy is like marathon energy. It's the energy where you wake up and you're excited for the day and you're ready to do things and you want to go and do and be busy. And we are here to bring things to life. The sacral center is the center of creativity and life force energy. Now, the biggest thing we need to watch out for is having that energy co-opted by other people. So if you're working a job that you don't love, if you don't allow yourself to have hobbies, if you were shamed for changing your mind, if you are told that you need to slow down and rest, but you're like, what? I have all this energy. I don't want to. I want to be busy. I want to be doing things. And so we're here to bring things to life. And when we are in alignment, we are a vibe. Like we
Mhm.
have this energy of just watch
I've
me
been
do it.
shamed so many times. Like, people have made comments about me being too busy. You stress me out. You do so
Oh,
much. You're on the go. And I'm like, "But I'm having so much fun." And then
yes.
my husband, um, before I knew about human design, we had already figured this out about me, because in 2015, I had my daughter was born in 14. I was like, oh, it's too much. I have a kid. I'm supposed to back down. So I pulled out of,
Mm,
like, almost everything. I just had my daughter and my job, and that was it. I got rid of all the extracurriculars in my life in an attempt
mm,
to quote unquote be a good mom. And my husband will tell you that 2015 was the hardest year to be married to me, because he's like, you
mm.
were not yourself. It was like I was exhausting because I was home. Like, that was
Yeah.
not everything suffered. My energy suffered, my business suffered, like, my mothering suffered, all of it suffered, because actually me being involved in things that I think are fun fuel me, and they fuel
Mm,
all the other things in my life. And I actually operate better with the
mhm,
busy that I choose. Like, choosing my
mm,
busy is very, very fueling for me. And I get that other people get exhausted looking at my life. They've always told me that since probably middle school. I'm
mhm.
like, okay, not I, but I can't. Like, I would go
Yeah.
crazy resting as much as even my husband needs to rest. Like, I can't. Like, I don't operate that way.
Yes. And our energy is designed to be in receivership. And so it's the more fun that we're having, the more opportunities, the more abundance, the more we're calling in. And you can replace the word fun with joy, pleasure. Like it also doesn't have to be, I go to an amusement park every day. It can be, I
mhm,
drink my coffee and I stare out the window for 10 minutes and that
mhm,
lights up my
mhm,
soul.
mhm,
And so we are here to be bringing things to life, but we have to be in love with them. And so
mhm,
what I often see is generators and manifesting generators that are exhausted, they're burnt out
mhm,
because they're living a life that they're not in love with.
mhm,
And then they come home and they're potentially numbing with TV, food. They're not filling themselves with, again, like it's like, okay, you don't have to love your job. You don't have to be like over the moon about the company that you work for, but like you got to be filling your cup in some way.
mhm,
And that's the kind of assignment I give when I do readings or when I have clients, generators and manifesting generators. I'm like, you need to be creating space for something that's just for you, that fills your cup with
mhm,
joy and pleasure, that
mhm,
expands your energy. Because the more that you focus on that, the more you
mhm,
call in.
mhm,
But we're deeply conditioned to grind. We're
mhm,
deeply conditioned to
mhm,
be hustling. We're deeply
mhm,
conditioned to try and force things to work
mhm,
and to go out and make it happen instead of leaning back and seeing like, okay, what wants to come through to me? What wants to be,
mhm,
this would be like your maybe your partner being like, you need a hobby, go out and get a hobby. And you just are like, okay, fine. And you do the first thing you see, but it doesn't actually excite you because you're just, whereas if you're like, okay, what hobby do I want to do? What am I responding to? Oh, there's a pottery class that excites me. Oh, there's Aikido or kickboxing. Oh, that sounds really cool. And so again, we want to follow what excites us.
Yeah. One of the things that really was game changer for me when I learned, I actually became an introvert after learning about being a generator.
Ah.
And because what happened was, being a generator was explained to me as, um, you generate the energy in a room. So like people feel your vibes. You walk into a room,
Mm,
and if you walk in the room angry, people start feeling kind of irritable and they don't really know why. You walk into
mm,
a room and you feel sad, people feel a little bit of sadness. They may not even know why. They're off. But you walk
mm,
into a room excited and lit up, and the room lights up and is a little more excited. Like
mm,
people feel your vibes. And therefore, one of the responsibilities, this is what I was told early on in learning about human design, is that one of the responsibilities that generators have is to understand the power of their energy and therefore manage it
mm,
well. So when you're walking
mm,
into a room, what are you bringing? And therefore, you have to be responsible for doing all the other stuff to make sure you're not walking into rooms irritable and in a bad mood, and then therefore affecting everybody else. And
mm,
so I realized that this was really, really true. And
mm,
I had some different groups that I was in or a part of, or rooms I was in, and there was a lot off, there was a lot not vibing, and I could see that despite what words came out of my mouth, I was able to recognize that I was part of the problem just by being in there. And I left
mm,
certain rooms. I also started experimenting. Um, there was a regular meeting of gathering of people. I don't want to call anybody out here. So a gathering of people that didn't always go well.
mm,
Just it wasn't always like 100%. And I said, I'm going to go to the next gathering, super chill, calm AF. Like, I'm going to be the vibe the room needs. And at the end, I'll never forget that as we're leaving, a person who's always there goes, "Oh my gosh, this is the most relaxing one we've ever had." And I thought,
mm,
"Oh my gosh, I did this." Like,
mm,
like maybe all that anxiety that everybody was feeling was mine because I didn't really jive
mm,
well with these people. And so I
mm.
was bringing all the anxiety and tension to the room. And I was like, "Oh gosh, the very reason I didn't like going here was actually my fault." Like, so, and so I just started taking more responsibility of my energy, and therefore my self-care had to elevate, because
Mm,
now I consider it a personal responsibility that if I'm going to be in a room, I need to get myself in order. And sometimes we still have to follow through with obligations. I'm not saying that I just canceled on everything, but I very strategically rearranged my whole life,
mm,
to make sure that I was in that joy and that pleasure, and that I was in the rooms I wanted to be in where I could go and be excited. And I heavily increased my solitude because I had to look at what helps me restore. In the background of my video right now, you can see a puzzle table.
Mm.
And so I actually take time to just sit in the quiet. And my fun, pleasure, joy thing I'm into right now is hot yoga, because it's like such a high and euphoric feeling I get afterwards. Like so many of the
Mm.
things that are my fun and my joy and my pleasure and my busyness right now are things that
Mhm.
I actually do by myself. It's my puzzles, it's my yoga, it's my meditation. It's like all these little things, because my kids take so much of the busy now. Like I've got swim team and
Mhm.
music lessons and all that kind of stuff. So they're between running my business and having kids, it's like the rest
Mhm.
has to be solitude. But learning about my energy type is kind of what gave me the permission to make these better self-care choices.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so beautiful. The one thing I do want to add is it's important for generators and manifesting generators to really be cleaning up the shoulds and be setting boundaries around like, okay, do I want to be doing this? Does this group excite me? The other thing with being an emotional authority is not shaming our emotions and understanding ourselves enough. Like I know myself enough now to know that I can be in a like a lower frequency emotion and go and connect with people and have that be raised. And so the only thing I want to say to your, I feel like it puts a lot of self-responsibility, which is good. And I've noticed with generators and manifesting generators that they can get really in their head about their energy, which isn't really where we want to be with it. And so I think what I got from your story was being aware of like if I if I allow my energy to be this way, what do I notice outside of me? Um, the other thing that I find very interesting about your chart is like your these two gates here, gate 43 and gate 23, which form a channel between your ajna and your throat. And yet you have no connection between the rest, right? So you have these two centers talking to each other, and then you have these 6 centers talking to each other. And that would tell me that I would imagine there's times where you can really speak your mind and you can really be like, I'm going to speak my mind right now, or this is what I believe. And then there are times when you're just fully in your body, like listening and feeling and trusting it. And I would question when you were really connected to like your own energy, if you were more in your body and then less kind of in your mind. I don't know if that resonates.
Yeah, sure. I think that that observation even comes out in the story that I told you. In that,
Mm,
like that, I think that's why I've been doing yoga for since 2011, so 12 years. But I went to my first hot yoga class this summer,
mm,
and I was like, this has to be a regular in my life, because and I do think it has to do with that though. It's like that
mm,
it's getting into my body in a deeper, more powerful, more centered way than I
mhm,
have had. And I do think it's fun. So I always encourage people to, whatever exercise or movement you're going to do, find one that you enjoy, because then you'll actually show up for it because you look
mhm.
forward to it. So like
Yeah.
I genuinely enjoy it. So there's that. But I think that that does, regarding the quieting the mind, I think that's why stuff like my puzzle table is self-care
Mhm,
for me, because I do get so caught up in the head. Now, regarding the
mhm,
2343, what's really interesting is that somewhere along the lines, I heard that channel, which by the way, for the listeners, I learned this from you, Crystal, and
mhm,
correct me if I say this wrong. Gates are where the number only goes like halfway. And then a channel is where there's a full connection between the two. So the fact that my
mhm,
23 and 43 connect makes it a channel. But on
mhm,
my chart, like my 1 and my 33 are gates, because they
mhm,
don't connect all the way.
mhm,
Okay. So this 2343 channel, um, I heard that's thoughts and opinions, and those are people
mhm,
meant to share more. That Learning about that channel is why I started the podcast,
mm,
because I had this reservation, like, who am I to be out there saying and speaking more? And we have enough voices.
mhm,
I'd already started writing my book before I agreed to this, before I learned about human design. But it was something about a permission slip, because I
Mhm.
know like not everybody, my husband has no idea, no inclination whatsoever. Does he want anybody to be listening to his thoughts and opinions? He loves keeping those to himself. Right.
Yeah.
But there was something about me that like needed to get this out. Like whatever's like,
Mhm.
I have this stuff that bubbles up inside of me. And then I have this impulse that like, I have to get this out or I'm going to
Mhm.
implode.
Mhm.
And when I learned about this is what I mean by human design's kind of creepy how accurate it is. It's like, this is why I always feel like I'm always like wanting to talk and write and have something to say. And I'm the person who posts
Mhm.
something on Instagram or Facebook and the caption is 2 paragraphs long and other people like put a cute little sentence like, Merry Christmas. And I'm like, this Christmas, this thing happened and this was
Mhm.
beautiful. And then like, I have so many words and they
Yeah.
want out. Um,
Yeah.
and so it's really interesting. Like that was another thing that human design did. It was like, it gave me, I feel like I gave myself the permission to
Mhm.
just go use my voice because like
Mhm.
some people in this world are meant to.
Yeah. But if we look at your design, like your emotional center is not connected to your throat center. And so what it really sounds like, the understanding of the emotional center and the way your energy impacts people is, I would be curious if the way you felt emotionally was then having your, like, you speak thoughts and opinions, not necessarily, I don't want to say in an aligned way, but potentially like getting you into trouble, right? So it's like, I feel
My
negative
words
in
have
this
gotten,
space,
oh yeah, I've got
right?
myself into trouble a lot.
Right. And so what it sounds like you did was that you allowed yourself to drop into your feelings without coming back up to the mind to try and make sense of it, or to be like, I need to express what's going on here, how I'm feeling, because that's not where it's connected. For me, my emotional center is connected to my throat center. And so I'm here to speak about how I'm feeling. That also gets me into trouble because how I'm feeling is so like on a so that's why, like, the nuance, it's one thing to be like, I'm a generator with an emotional authority, but it's really like we start exploring the depths of the chart of what that really means.
It's so fascinating. Okay, I want to make sure we have time
Yeah.
to speak to the other energy types because
Hmm.
I know a ton of my clients are projectors. So for whatever reason, I
Hmm.
attract projectors because a lot of them
Hmm.
are. And so speak to the other, and I have a couple of BFFs that are manifestors, and I think that's
Hmm.
such a cool type to be.
Yeah.
So speak to the other types, so that people can feel seen as they look at their chart.
Yeah. So projectors are make up about 21% of the population, and they are these next level guides. And so the generator and the manifesting generator's existential question is really like, who am I? We're really like experiencing life to find out more of who we are. The projector's existential question is, who are you? They're designed where generators and manifesting generators, our aura is big and out. The projector's aura is absorbing, it's drawing in, it's really seeing people. And their their kind of biggest challenge is that they need to see themselves first before anyone else can see them. Projectors have this incredible power. They're here to be seen and recognized and invited into things. And yet, if they are hiding, if they are not seeing themselves, if they are not allowing themselves to be seen, then they start feeling bitter and they start being like, I don't understand what's happening. Like, you know, I have this power, but they're not allowing it to actually be felt by others. I think one of the biggest things that I see projectors getting confused about is the invitation. Like, the invitation is not wait for life to happen. The invitation is like, stand in your power and see what happens. See what podcasts you get invited to. See what events people start asking you about. See what's coming in. And then understand that inside of that, you still have to understand your own energy of like, is this right for me? Is everything right? Is the timing right? Is the person right? Is this right? Projectors that are in business need to understand that you just have to keep being seen and showing up. And the invitation is already there. The people who are following you have invited you to keep talking to them. And so keep doing that. Manifestors make up about 8% of the population. And
Real quick pause before
yeah,
we
yeah.
switch over to manifestors. a couple of things that I've seen common in the projectors I've worked with, and tell me if this is the right guidance. Um, that they Whereas a generator, like our energy is meant to, like, we wake up and then we go until we
Mm,
crash. And
mm,
so I have seen, like, I have days where I can easily go 16 hours, but I have days where I've got 4 in me and then I'm spent. And
mhm,
so it's like a generator goes, and then once we're done, we're like done and we crash.
mhm,
But a good generator's day is I used up all my energy and then I pass out.
mhm,
But projectors, this society we've built with this 40-hour work week and these 8-hour days are not meant, because they're more highly observant people. They're taking a lot more in, and
mhm,
therefore they are actually more efficient with their time than generators are. And therefore, with a couple of entrepreneur projectors I've worked with, I've actually encouraged them to shorten their working hours to provide
mhm,
more time for the restoration side, because they don't need to be shooting on themselves about these like 8 hours, because it's actually more
mhm,
about the impact of what they're doing. And so, can you speak a little bit about, for the projectors, about their relationship with rest and
mhm.
and how their energy is just, it flows different than generators, and to not be like so shooted on. I feel like that happens a lot for them.
Yeah, definitely. So, like I said, with generators and manifesting generators, we want to focus on fun, joy, and pleasure. That's how our tanks are refilled. For projectors, we want to focus on self care. So, what does that mean for them? And that oftentimes projectors need alone time because their energy is so absorbing. So, we want to come back to your own energy and how that feels when you're not around anyone else, and really taking care of the body. And so it doesn't have to be physical, like I lay down and rest, but movement, journaling, meditation, a walk in nature, anything that you do that is alone time that feels like self care.
I have one projector friend that like really needs her tennis.
Yeah. Yeah. So anything that, yeah, I often find projectors want to be moving their body in some way. They are extremely efficient. And so the biggest thing I see, the biggest kind of detriment I see to projectors is time for money, because they're very efficient. And so if they're giving you 8 hours, they're doing like 10 to 12 hours of work. But then they're feeling overextended and underappreciated. The projectors
Mm.
I know that work in corporate have loved working from home because their time is their own and they get their work done. And it's like, oh, yeah, it's just based on like the results, not how much time I put into it.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
And cleansing, they really need to cleanse their energy. So because your energy is absorbing, and so any sort of smudge, sage, palo santo, bells, water, anything that you do to release the energy of other people, especially if you are a projector that doesn't have this center defined. So if this center is white, which is the emotional
So if you're listening
solar
on the
plexus,
podcast and not on the video, it's
yeah,
the triangle on the bottom right side. What could that be
yes.
called, depending on how they're looking it up?
Yeah, so it'll be called the solar plexus or the
Okay.
emotional solar plexus.
Okay.
You'll know you're you have it defined regardless because you will be a solar plexus emotional authority. So if you are not a solar
Mhm.
plexus emotional authority, then you do not have this defined, and you really need to be aware of the emotions that you're taking on from other people. And so projectors, this is especially important for you because you're absorbing energy, then you're absorbing emotions of other people. And so you really need time to let go of all of that, to clean up your energy.
All right. So manifestors.
Manifestors make up about 8% of the population. And their existential question is really like, what is my vision? Where am I going? The biggest thing, the manifestors have like these big visions. And what can be challenging for them is to like know what the next step is. They can see so far into the future that they really need to bring it back into the present. Now, they also have not been gifted the sacral center. Like I said, this is only manifesting generators and generators. And so, again, like projectors, they don't have a ton of energy to be working with. The manifestor's goal is really to be so lit up and excited and clear on their vision that they can get generators and manifesting generators to come with them. I like to think of it as a train. So the manifester is driving their train, and their goal is to get people on their train that are going to help them get to the next stop. Now, you might get people that come for one stop and then they get off, and then you might get people that come for many stops. And so it's not about them getting off. It's about you empowering them to get on, and then them taking you to the next station, and then trusting that, like, okay, I'm even more clear. Who wants to come on now and help me get there? So where generators and manifesting generators need fun, joy, and pleasure, and projectors need self-care, manifestors need boredom. And they need to be able to create space for the vision to come through. And so when I see manifestors that are just grinding away and they're not trusting their vision and they're not trusting that they can invite people in to help them along with it, they get really burnt out. And the other side of that is sometimes manifestors get stuck in inaction. So they are here to initiate. They are here to initiate people into action, into doing things, and they need to have the confidence to take action. And so we either see manifestors that are burnt out from too much misaligned action and not enough rest and boredom, or we see manifestors that are not actually taking action, and so they're not getting anywhere and they're feeling stuck, and just they have the vision, they know where they want to go, but they're not taking any steps to actually bring it to life.
Yeah. Yeah. I have seen that. And then, and so for them, the focus is creating space for some boredom and some rest, right?
Yeah. And that will allow the vision to solidify, to become more clear. And the other thing too is, like, sometimes they can, like, understand the long term, but they need the rest to be clear on, like, hey, what is the next action I take to get there?
Yeah.
And it's not always linear, like their vision might be a year out, and then their vision kind of grows and changes and morphs, and the more creativity they can bring, the more aligned they feel. They really, like, I think we're all creative beings, but manifestors, when they really drop in and allow the trust to be there of, like, hey, this is the next step, this is where I'm going, this is how I want to bring it to life, who's coming with me, it helps them so much more, because they're not designed to be doing all the work.
I have heard, and tell me if this is your understanding,
Mhm.
that manifestors energy, whereas like a generator runs on more similar to a 24-hour cycle, like get some sleep, start
Mm,
over, go. A manifestor moves in waves, and those could be days, they could be months. But like I
mm,
heard that that two famous examples of manifestors are Taylor Swift and Adele, who you will
mm,
see they do really big things and then they disappear. And then
mhm,
they're doing their thing, they're doing whatever, they have their visions, they're doing their work, but they're out of like sight. Like Adele, we
mhm,
won't hear a word from her. And then 3 years later, she's like, I have a new album and I'm everywhere. And now I'm gone
mhm,
again. It's like you
mhm,
see it sees it in waves. Like Taylor Swift didn't do like a bunch of stuff and now all of a sudden she's everywhere. And then she's
mhm,
probably going to disappear as soon as the air tour's over, kind of a thing. And so it's this, these like waves that they move in, and it doesn't always have to
mhm.
be there. Those examples are years, but it could also just be smaller increments too. Would you say that
Yeah,
their energy moves more wave like versus like generators are more cyclical?
yeah. Generators are more daily, and I would say, yeah, manifestors, it's like a work, rest, play kind of cycle.
Okay.
And they can go through rest periods that do last months. Now, with the examples you used, they seem so extreme because they're manifestors who have to be on all the time when they're on. And so I would imagine they need a lot of space for their nervous systems to recover and their energy to recover. Whereas if you are a generator, and one of my mentors, Victoria Washington, not a generator, one of my mentors, Victoria Washington, is a manifester. And So, she's gotten really into a beautiful flow of work, rest, play, and it allows her to sustain her energy more consistently. But if you're a manifester and you're like, yo, I work hard for the winter, like maybe you're hosting retreats and you're like, yeah, my goal is to have 4 retreats a year, then you might notice like, okay, and then I need 6 months of recovery so that I can understand what is the next retreat and what does it want to bring and how am I being upgraded to this next level?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's so interesting. And then we have
Yeah.
one left, right?
And then we have
Reflectors.
one left. We have reflectors. They make up 1% of the
I don't
population.
have any in my phone. So like I have an app where I can keep adding people to
Mm.
pull up their charts. And I've been doing that for like probably 15 months. I've been accumulating clients, friends, people I meet at a baby shower. Like I've just
Yeah,
been
yeah.
accumulating all these things. And but I still have yet to meet a reflector personally.
Hmm. Reflectors are, I know quite a few. Well, not quite a few, but
And that's
they're
not to
only
say I may
1%.
have met them. I just haven't seen their
Yeah,
charts. So
yeah, for
there's
sure.
that.
They make up 1% of the population and they have a big role. And they didn't come in for an easy life, that's for sure. They're here to reflect back the health of the communities that they're in. And what I notice is a lot of times when they aren't, depending on their upbringing, they they can be the ones that kind of get the brunt, and especially if they are more prone to be outspoken, to be like, this is what I see, this is what's happening. And depending on whether they're coming from their own trauma or they're hiding their weirdness or they're not allowing themselves to be seen, it can be really hard for them because they end up being projected on, they end up being vilified, they end up being isolated, and they're here to be seen, they're here to be invited in. And so the existential question for the reflector is, who am I today? Because they have no centers colored in. So their chart is completely white except
Really?
for, excuse me, except for any channel, any gates. So they'll have the traditional numbers along
Okay.
the
So
side.
they'll have gates and channels, but then
They'll
all
have
their
no channels.
centers, no channels.
No, channels are what define centers. So they'll only have gates.
Oh,
So they'll have no gates that meet to form a channel. So every center is white. And so
wow.
who they are is really dependent on where they are and who they're with. So for
Oh,
them, it's a
wow.
really
Like
big,
it makes you think of the saying when we might call somebody like, oh, they're a chameleon. They just like
yes.
absorb whatever they're around. I have a friend I
Yeah.
can think of from many years ago. I was just like, what is her actual personality? Because I feel like she is a reflection of whoever she's dating. She just would like move through
Hmm.
these identities. And I was like, I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah. Oh, that cannot, if your G center, so the diamond in the middle, if that one is white, that is the same. It's our identity. And so when your G center is undefined or white, you're a chameleon. You're designed to be mirroring back the identities of other people. And so with the reflector, they're here to like just let themselves be who they are in the moment. And the one piece of advice I would give to reflectors is, at the end of the day, reflect on who you were, what felt good, what didn't feel good, who are people that don't make you feel good. And so you can have a deeper understanding of yourself. The reflectors are here to be guided by the moon. They have like, gosh, to be a reflector, I know I'm someone that's like, oh, I wish I was the most rare. But the more I learn, I'm like, damn, they came here for this. They were like, sign me up for the challenge, chief, because I am like, yeah, it's challenging to not have a fixed sense of identity, to not have a fixed sense of direction, authority. It takes a lot of inner work to for them to understand themselves. And so for them, I really invite them at the end of the day to reflect upon, like, how did I feel? What felt good? What decisions am I trying to make? How did I feel about those decisions? And they'll start to notice patterns within themselves that become a consistent thing that they can start relying on.
Fascinating. That makes me think of like, okay, we might all be experimenting, but theirs is like the great experiment. It's like that's that constant, never ending. I mean, if you're having to just always learn from the patterns, that's fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Wow. Okay. I could literally talk about human design all day,
Me too.
because we left so much off of the table. I mean,
Yeah.
we hit just the types. So, for those of you listening, you've got to go snag your chart. There are really cool little good categories we didn't even touch on today, like the senses. Like one that pops out of me is I don't have the one that's like the outer beauty sense. But if you look at my background, I have a girlfriend who is, and my husband is. And
Mm,
like, I know I don't have outer beauty anywhere in
mm,
my chart, and they do. So like I rely on them for that in my life. And it's so funny
mm,
how like all these things are so I have mine is a smell, which I think is
mm,
discernment. Um,
mhm.
and so it's like there's these things about senses. There's things about how you digest your food and the ways to eat. And there's like so I encourage you guys, if you have not pulled up your chart, listen, you can pull up your chart and stay a skeptic at the same time if you want. Just go read it with a curious mind. And I will tell you, I've been talking about this almost daily with my husband for 15 months, and he is probably still highly skeptical. It's like my cute, like pat me on the head, adorable, like Sophia and her like funny woo stuff she's into. Um,
Mm,
and yet though, like it keeps being really true. So he knows like there might be something to it, but he's still a skeptic. And so I would hope that you guys would go with an open mind into your chart and see what you can learn about yourself. And Crystal, tell us so that they can go to your website to
mhm.
pull up their chart. The link's going to
Yep.
be in the show notes. How else can they connect with you?
Yeah, so I hang out lots on Instagram. I have lots of information on there as well, especially around what you were just saying, the kind of deeper levels of like how you're meant to eat, what environment you're here to be in. So I have some stuff around that. I also have videos on YouTube. Those you can get to all through my Instagram that really explain the foundational parts of human design, helping you understand deeper yourself. And it really is an experiment. And so at the end of the day, I spend a lot of time Googling it myself. But when you have someone who's trained like I am, it's like I can look at your chart and just be like, oh, here's what I see going on. So yeah, getting a reading, working deeper
And
with
you
someone
offer
one on
those,
one.
right? So they can find them on your
I do,
website.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. I love this. And then when you talk about your business, what is
Mhm.
it that you are doing? You've referred, I started bringing this into my work. What is it that you do with people other than just you? So you do these human design readings. And then what else do you do? What does it mean to work with you?
Yeah, so I work one-on-one helping people really get into alignment. Like, what does it mean to live your design? And starting next year, I'm going to focus more on business. So, how do
Beautiful.
you utilize your design in your business for the most amount of impact, for the least amount of effort?
Beautiful. Love, love, love it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anything else before we go?
Uh, No, I don't think so. I also, there is. I do relationship readings as well because I see human design as this two-way mirror. So first you use it to see yourself, understand yourself, know yourself, and then you spin it around and it becomes the window through which you get to view others, seeing them as the unique individuals they are. It's helped me so much stop trying to like control other people. Why don't you do it this way? It's like, oh, it's because you're not designed to, because we're designed completely differently. So relationship readings, family readings, understanding your children, it is so, so helpful. It has helped me so much in my own life.
Awesome. Beautiful. Love, love, love it. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for coming today. I'm so
Yay.
excited to publish this and for people to go get their charts and their readings and all this good stuff. This to me, you talk about generators being in their fun. This shit's fun. Like I think this stuff is
Yes.
such a joy and pleasure. I love, love, love it. So, okay. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah. Thank you for
And
having
guys,
me.
go connect with Crystal.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.